At 4:19 a.m., two Su-34s rolled into a forward refueling point in the east, a routine pit stop on paper, but in the chain of events, it was the single most exposed instant of their mission. For weeks, Ukrainian watchers had been waiting for this very minute, timing each heartbeat of the enemy's rhythm until patience met opportunity. The Russians believed their hidden strip was safe, folded into the landscape and out of reach. What followed was not simply an engagement. It was a surgical declaration, a lightning-fast preemptive blow that erased a whole squadron before engines could spin up. No scramble, no escape, only the terrifying finality of something that arrived when they least expected it. High above, at 8,000 meters, a shark-shaped reconnaissance drone cruised, its thermal camera painting ghostly heat signatures onto a distant monitor. Down below, the forward field lay in the hush of night. But in Ukraine's 54th Electronic Brigade, every flicker of movement had been converted into intelligence. For days, their analysts had tracked a repeating pattern, pairs of Su-34s touching down, refueling, rearming, and returning to the front on a near-mechanical cadence. These jets weren't shuttling back from deep bases. They were siphoning fuel from an ad hoc station tucked just behind the lines, a detail that presented a decisive weakness. If the refueling hub could be neutralized at the instant the aircraft were helpless, the enemy's airborne punch would be blunted. So the mission was set: strike the replenishment cluster at its most exposed second and deny the Russians their strike capability. The effort began with relentless surveillance, a web of stealth drones tracing a spiral watch pattern through the night, building thermal maps and a three-dimensional picture of equipment under camouflage. Repeated observations placed groups of Su-34s at a narrow strip between two sparse copses, fuel tankers and weapons trucks crouched under nets, but multispectral sensors betrayed the faint warmth of engines and recently moved metal. The pattern was precise. Roughly every 90-odd minutes a pair would land. Fueling consumed minutes. Rearming took several more. An 11-15-minute window when mobility and active defense were effectively off the table. That was the knife's edge. Electronic teams cross-checked radar chatter, radio bursts, and shifts in air defense focus. The plot could only move forward if the aerial corridor briefly cleared, if Russian radars were drawn away by other disturbances. After 19 days of round-the-clock watching, ships on station, and hundreds of gigabytes of imagery and signals, the moment crystallized. At 04:19, two Su-34s touched down and technicians began the slow, exposed choreography of refueling and rearming. Farther west, a barrage of decoy activity tugged enemy air defenses in another direction. The window opened, and it was narrow. Beneath the ground near Sloviansk, the command room was ice calm. A soft, pink-tinted 3D map pulsed on the main display, updating live with every asset, every heat spot. Two red icons blinked. The jets had landed less than 2 minutes earlier. Drone feeds showed crews hoisting wing flaps, connecting hoses, and bringing up loadout trucks. In the distance, a HIMARS battery fired masking rounds toward a staged target, provoking the expected radar reorientation. That fleeting distraction was enough. Pre-positioned MiG-29s, staged days ahead and constantly shifting to defeat observation, split into small flight groups. Each carried heavy penetrators adapted with local guidance kits and linked to forward drone relays. Low-flying tactical drones threaded the tree line, streaming infrared and terrain updates to the guided munitions. Another medium-altitude platform fed encrypted guidance signals to keep the system resilient against jamming. Everything converged in the coordination node. Flight profiles, altitudes, release points, decoying sequences, all pre-computed and waiting for the final go. When the order came, the sky answered. Within seconds, two MiG-29 pilots executed a steep release, shedding massive, guided warheads that spiraled and corrected hundreds of times a second as they fell. These were not indiscriminate blasts. They were engineered to pierce hardened structures and detonate where they would do the most structural damage. On the ground, maintenance teams were still exposed, crews topping off tanks, a pilot pulling on gloves, technicians moving among the rows. It was precisely the time of vulnerability the Ukrainians had predicted. Impact was catastrophic. One warhead breached a fuel pod beneath an Su-34, Another slammed into the electronic support cluster. Almost simultaneously, nearby weapon tents and an ammunition truck were struck. Secondary detonations shredded the perimeter. The site erupted in fire that climbed above the trees, a violent column of orange and black, while thermal cameras juddered from the intensity. In minutes, a compact, functioning airstrip was transformed into a molten field of steel and cratered concrete. The operation pressed on. A follow-on flight delivered smaller gliding munitions designed to reach and destroy recovery gear, radar repeaters, power units, and communications relays, to make any rapid repair or coordination impossible. Low, nimble drones darted in to harass and finish off exposed personnel and vehicles attempting to flee, their shaped charges inflicting localized havoc. Electronic warfare keyed up and faltered under the assault. Radars and jammers were blinded or destroyed before they could mount a coherent defense. Within 4 minutes, the base's layered protections had been unpicked. From the command post, officers watched the live feeds in muted focus. The wreckage was total. The once proud rows of aircraft were now twisted shells, runways ruptured into jagged shards, and supply lines severed. The blast waves left the landscape pocked and smoking. Even the ejection seats showed no clear survivors in some cockpits. Fire gutted fuel trucks and ignited munitions, producing secondary explosions that rent the night. As dawn bled in, the site stank of burnt oil, hot metal, and the terrible residues of conflict. By 0431, the strike elements had climbed away, threading a northern arc and slipping back towards safety. Drone teams disengaged and initiated self-destruct protocols where necessary to deny tracing. No air defenses had generated a lethal response in time. No interceptors were launched. The mission had not only annihilated aircraft and materiel, it had dismantled the base's ability to recover or coordinate for the foreseeable future. Fuel systems obliterated, radars and repeaters shattered, munitions scattered or detonated, and communications dark. In the aftermath, reconnaissance UAVs circled like vultures, documenting the ruins that modern aviation once occupied. Steel frames lay bent and blackened. Concrete was uplifted and ruptured into grotesque teeth. The command container that had coordinated missions was now a cratered husk. Survivors, if any remained, picked through the ashes beneath a sky that had been set alight. A final sequence of small targeted strikes extinguished auxiliary power nodes and backup antennas, ensuring that even a rapid repair would be immensely difficult. Back at the Ukrainian post, there was no celebration, only the sober business of accountability. Screens shifted from red to gray as signals vanished. A commander removed his headset and logged a single, concise entry. Forward refueling point neutralized. Contingency plans were executed. Forces withdrew methodically once reconnaissance confirmed no lingering threats. The cost to the adversary was immediate and strategic. An entire tactical bombing capability in that sector was gone for days, perhaps longer. No runways, no fuel, no functioning radar hubs, a severed limb in the enemy's operational body. That night did not rewrite the laws of war. It underscored an old lesson. Timing, patience, and integrated intelligence can be as decisive as raw firepower. By choosing to strike when the enemy was at its most exposed, the attackers denied opportunity rather than sought a pitched fight. Each ruined minute for the Su-34s was a minute gain for Ukrainian artillery and the defenders at the front. If this episode belongs in the study of modern operations, it will be not for the spectacle of destruction, but for how a long game of observation and precision turned routine logistics into a battlefield turning point. Thank you for following this account. Stay tuned for the next chapter in Ukraine's ongoing contests of timing and will.